Welcome to Chris and Jen in the Morning.
Where it's always morning somewhere.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Jen. Well, we're super excited to be here today. And we want to start out with gratitude. And I'll start us off with a gratitude moment. Today, I've made some changes in my life recently in the last month, big changes. And what I realized this morning is I'm just really grateful to have the space, like the mental capacity to start being aware of the things I've been missing out on in life. Last night I was playing with the dogs and like just noticing how absolutely soft and furry and like delicious it was to play with our husky and pet her and cuddle with her and like just this overwhelming feeling of, oh my goodness, like the joy that you get from petting the dog. That was like novel to me. So just the time to slow down. It's taken me about a month to get there, which is probably faster than some people would have guessed. But to slow down enough to start noticing and realizing the things I've been missing out on in life. So I've been feeling that feeling the last few days, and I'm just I'm really grateful to have the opportunity in life to get to slow down and really enjoy everything that is here and around me.
I love that. I'm glad you have that. And I'm glad you are like moving into that space now, because I know it did take a little bit for you to get comfortable there. So,
I mean, we're not saying I'm going to stay comfortable there. I wouldn't necessarily call myself comfortable in that space, but like I'm easing into it.
okay. All right.
My toes are in the water.
They're in the water, the proverbial water.
What about you?
I'm really grateful to live in a community. We live in Queens in a neighborhood called Sunnyside, and it is a great community that people can put up signs. There's Facebook groups, and if there's a pet that's lost, if there's like IDs or keys that fall out of pockets, like people actually take the time to take care of those things, to post, to try and help reconnect people with things. And I love that we live in this like neighborhood where people care for one another. Because, and this, I don't think the city gets like a lot of great love for those things. And so the fact that you can hear some tough news about the city, but then see in my own little community that it is people taking care of each other and bought into this community. I love that. So I'm very grateful for that.
I love that too. That's amazing. And, as my therapist always says, people are generally good.
So let's move on to our section where we're talking about honoring our emotions. Because I do think like this last week, I called you with big feelings. As I've said before, I have big feelings. And so sometimes I can process them by myself. Sometimes I need to talk to someone about them. And I really appreciated that, because what I had going on, I kept kind of dismissing my emotions in the processing of the information and trying to move on. And you very kindly reminded me that like your emotions have space, your emotions are valid, they are telling you something, which kind of led us to the topic that we're talking about this week. Sometimes it can just feel very overwhelming, and sometimes if
intense.
You are intense, and if you are a person who like has lots of feelings, lots of emotions, like it can feel overwhelming at times. And so I thought,
like there's a lot of tension to process everywhere you go lately. Yeah. Just in our kind of repetitive theme of being intentional, owning how we respond, kind of finding the power within not just being at the mercy of our impulses. As an impulsive person, this is a theme I continue to explore. But truly, this concept of being able to honor your emotions is something that I pay to learn how to do in therapy. Something that for me, my kind of learned behavior or sort of natural tendency or the combination of both was always just you have an impulse, act on it. Do it satisfy that almost uncomfortable itch within you that won't be quiet until you satisfy it by, following through on it. So, you feel like you're upset and you need to have an argument, you're going to have that argument right then and there. And, learning that other people, like maybe your husband, they don't operate that way.
That
And
is not a helpful approach.
there might be a different way to go about it. I think before I didn't even give these scenarios thought that there was a different way to go about it. I was just operating on instinct and impulse. And so for me, learning one, that emotions are valid, you shouldn't ignore them. And at the same time, you don't have to act in the impulse of your
Yeah.
emotion. And the world's not going to fall apart. So a couple of examples, and then we'll describe this a little bit more in detail, along with kind of some really easy to follow steps. But Chris, why don't you start? You've got a personal example
Yeah.
of a story to share where this comes up for you.
Yeah. So when we were like having this conversation, it just kind of reminded me of this time. So my parents divorced later in my life. So I was an adult. I was living here in New York City. They just needed like help from like moving, getting their house moved out of, things like that. And I realized like in that moment, I had a lot of strong feelings, opinions, all of these things, but it wasn't like the best time to really express them and all of these things. And so I really just I compartmentalized for the moment, like they need help. I need to go help them. They're my parents. I love them. I respect them. Um, and and so this is how I'm going to show up for them. That does not mean that like I totally pushed those feelings and emotions out. And we have spoken and I have shared all of my feelings. But to me, it was like one of those times where I think if I had let my emotions get the best of me, it wouldn't have been helpful for anyone, even for myself. And so just taking that time to kind of acknowledge that I have feelings, acknowledge like the potential impact they could have on a situation, and then taking like, let's just set these aside for now. Let's go get this action done, and then we move into the processing of these things. And it works. Like good relationship still with both my parents. But it took mindful, purposeful action.
I think, so this does show up in personal situations, of course. It also shows up in professional situations. And for me, one of the many examples that I can think about, years ago, I was at a company that was going through a big change, and the company was really going a different direction. I struggled to let go of what I kind of knew, and I was really committed, and my identity for all of my adult life really has been very wrapped up in my career. And so I did not see those things as separate. And so I really was feeling very at odds within myself. I was doing a lot of traveling, and I just recall sitting on an airplane, getting ready for them to close the doors. My heart rate is just off the charts. I keep getting these high heart rate notifications, and I feel dizzy and really uncomfortable. I was like, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. What if they close the door and I have a heart attack midair? That does not help. In this situation.
That didn't help calm the heart rate.
Because then I was thinking, I was on my way home and I was thinking, what do I do? Do I tell them I think I need to get off the plane? And then I'm stuck here and I have to figure out whether this is a real situation or whether it's not. Or do I continue on, tell myself it's going to be okay? And like potentially have an emergency midair. I reasoned out for myself in this scenario that like I was having a panic attack. But this thing continued to then happen. I continued to have panic attacks. I didn't understand. I've had panic attacks my whole life, but I didn't know that that's what was happening. But they were becoming really like physically extreme, and my heart rate was just, it was, this is not healthy. And my doctor actually even said to me, like, you've got to make a change, because I'm afraid you're going to end up, he's told me this story about a woman that had ended up with palsy because of the stress in her job. And like he literally sat across from me and was like, you have got to make a change. And I just was like, you don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking inside. Turns out that what I processed through was that the company was growing in a direction that just was no longer in line with my personal values and my personal satisfaction and my happiness. And I did end up leaving, not because I think it's not a great place, but just because it wasn't for me anymore.
Yep.
But I was really, one, shoving down all of my emotions about that, trying to ignore them, and in total denial. And I was, not being intentional about what things should look like. And I remember when I finally decided to leave, something, things just kept happening and my response kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I had called an old boss and I was just in tears, inconsolable, which, like, for me, was very abnormal in a professional setting. And then to like actually do that in front of a leader that I had so respected, was very vulnerable, which is not a thing I do well. And he was incredibly kind, and he just said, Jen, like, you're pragmatic. Think about this pragmatically. Like, is this good for you? Is this like, and I was like, all of a sudden, um, you know, through the conversation that we had, it became very clear to me the decision I needed to make. But it took
Yeah.
me needing to get out of my own space to really give myself the time to honor my emotions, think about what I was actually going through, acknowledge that, and then kind of pause and then create a plan, and then act on the plan, which I did. And so that's kind of the framework for
Yeah.
how to go about honoring your emotions and then making an intentional decision about how to move forward. It's 4 steps. So it's feel, pause, plan, and act. And you have to actually do all 4 steps in order for this to work. um, you can't like fast track it. You can't do just 3 of the 4,
Right.
or you're going to find yourself needing to revisit. I can tell you from experience. So feel, pause, plan, act. I think the first 2 are the ones I struggle with the most. One, feel. I mean, I feel in the moment, but I don't really allow myself to feel. I then very
Yeah.
quickly suppress. So
Well, and
feel.
I think that's like a really important thing to highlight there.
Yeah.
It's like it's that idea of like honoring your emotions, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not just acknowledging them, but understanding them for what they are here for.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that. Like what does it mean to really feel or honor your emotions, and why does it matter?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think for me, we all have emotions, and you reminded me of this the other day when we were talking. Like, you have feelings for a reason. They come from some place for a reason. So to just totally dismiss them is a miss. So like, um where is it coming from and why? And in that moment, I don't think I had the wherewithal to truly, I could pinpoint the feeling that I was having, but I couldn't pinpoint like the where it was coming from, and what was like the action that feeling was trying to pull or push me into. And I
I
think
th-
that
I
was the
think
hard part.
I think really often what I observe about you is that you are like so focused on caring for other people, whoever else is in the scenario, that if if your feelings are impacted, your tendency is to avoid those because you are instead thinking about everybody else's feelings, which I think is how this shows up for some people. Um, for me, I think I'm more of a feelings avoider unless I'm really caught into it. Like,
Yeah.
and because I haven't processed those feelings about whatever is really underlying, um, then a small thing will happen and it just the over um the over feeling of the situation happens,
Yeah.
and it kind of explodes on me. I don't know,
I mean,
does that
I think for you, I consider you a very intelligent person. And so I think you are very quick to move to the how do we solve a problem? How do we fix it? And
yeah.
I don't think it's in the way that you process it. It's like you're trying to put anything on anyone. I think it's how you need to take action or do whatever. Because I feel like a lot of times the advice that it's interesting now that we're like really talking about
Yeah.
this. The I feel like the advice that we give one another is very much so around Jen, feel your feelings. It's okay. Press pause. Go process this and then come back to it. And you're like, feel your feelings. Other people are allowed to have their own. You don't have to manage them for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not comfortable with my feelings. And I think a lot of that just comes, from like past and learned behaviors and all of those things. I also am much more comfortable with things I can control, and my feelings are not something I can control. And
Yeah.
one of the things I've been learning is the importance of honoring and respecting my feelings. And so, there's a statement that I read yesterday that just really felt powerful to me. Emotions are signals, not enemies. And to me, that's one of those things I need to write down on a postcard and put in front of me because your emotions aren't your enemies. And not that I would frame it up to think, emotions are enemies, but really that's how I treat them. But they're signals, and it's so funny that here I can tell you this, but then to apply it to my own self. Like advice we give is often, advice we also need to give ourselves.
Neat.
And you and I have
Yeah.
said that to each other very frequently. Yeah, I can tell you this, but you're going to have to tell me the same thing.
Save
Or,
this for later when I call.
but how do you do this? So listen to where you feel different emotions in your body. Because emotions, you actually do feel them physically. And if you're not aware of where you feel those emotions physically, then you're probably ignoring them or suppressing them or trying not to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
What I've learned through therapy is that failing or refusing to deal with your feelings or suppressed emotion and feeling that you're not acknowledging, that's what creates panic attacks. One of the things that I have to work on in order to stop being in that scenario is allowing myself to sit in this feel phase. So for me, I feel a lot of my feelings here in my chest, like a lot of when I feel anxious, nervous, worried, unsure, all of that happens right here. When I am terrified, that's down in the pit of my stomach, and I can physically feel that fear down in the pit of my stomach. So just think about where you feel
Yeah.
feelings in your body is different for a lot of different people. um where do you feel joy? It's good feelings too. Where do you feel joy, Chris?
It's interesting that you said the pit of your stomach is where you feel that deep fear, angst. When I feel joy, I feel it radiate from my core.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes over my my body because I just want to share it. I want to engage. I just feel lighter in totality when I am truly in a joyous state. Um, and so it was interesting to hear how you kind of explained your deep
Yeah.
fear.
When I when I feel joy, I think of the warm sunshine on a blue sky day with green grass that doesn't make you itch, shining down on your. It's kind of like this warm feeling on the top of your head in the
Yeah.
most delightful way. So when I was like petting the dog last night and down on the floor, just feeling like how absolutely soft and like delectable that moment was. It was like just this warm, radiant, like sun on a blue sky day, sort of a feeling down from my head down,
Yeah,
all the way to my toes. So
I
just
love
really
that.
interesting, which is also interesting that like the good feelings get the whole body engaged. I'm think a little more about that.
Well, they
Um,
say when you laugh and when you like smiling uses a lot of muscles. When
yeah.
laughing actually uses a lot of muscles as well, but it also causes serotonin, I think, to be like
Yeah.
released into your body. There are positive effects of these things, and so really, really embrace the joy, folks.
So think about what your tells are as well. You know, I move a lot. I'm a very fidgety person, but I know other people are much more aware of how I'm feeling than I am often because I'm moving in a certain way or doing a certain thing or I'm making a certain expression that I'm not necessarily tuned into. Becoming more aware of like my own tells is a way to kind of check in and then start going, okay, wait, something's going on here, and I need to start honoring this
Yeah,
emotion, which I'm ignoring, and doing some physical something to kind of get that emotion out of my body.
I love that you talk about how like it manifests in your body, like because for
Mm-hmm.
me, when I'm feeling anxious or overly stressed about something, it's not really my body, it's my mind. Like my
Yeah.
thoughts begin, the only way I can really describe it is like it starts to spiral. Like I just get into this place and I just keep going and going and going. And I have to like once I finally realize what I'm doing, I am then able to I do the exact thing that you just said, like check in with myself. Like, okay, what is happening?
I mean, I
What
do those things all the time. That's not a tell for
but I
me.
think but I think that's like why this conversation is
Yeah.
important because it shows up differently in everybody.
Absolutely.
How it shows up, how it manifests, and then like how you stop it. Like for me, I am able to stop my thoughts. Like I am able to stop myself in those moments to figure out, okay, why are we spiraling at 2 a.m.?
Because I think you've been practicing it. Like you've got a lot of awareness there. For you, I think it's stopping and going, wait a second. Am I doing this? But once you're aware that that's what you're doing, I think that's like giving yourself the chance to really go, wait a second, which often happens in the middle of the night when there's no more noise
Right.
there. Um,
That's actually
but
really interesting. And just like as you say that, like in those moments, I'm not thinking about others. Like I'm
yeah,
reflecting on myself.
yeah.
Hmm. Look at this insights.
Um, which is maybe good for like where you are in time and space and where you need to go to honor your emotions. Sometimes you need to get away, sometimes yeah. So thinking through that I think is good. I One of the other tips here is, like I mentioned, other people are more aware of what's going on with me than I am, or at least that there is something going on with me. If this is something that I'm struggling with, which I am working through this, but they don't have that level of awareness as well. It's just trusted people, just a couple of trusted people, but like you, my husband, my therapist, um, you know,
I feel
he loves
honored
to
to be on
ask
that
me,
list.
he'll pause in the middle of our conversation. I'll say, well, what are you feeling? I hate that question, which he knows. And I tell him, this is something to work through. What I've started to say is, what are you seeing? Having those trusted people, just, your very few tight, close circle, uh, who you can say, like, look, I'm really working on this, but I need help tuning in. So, like, as you're seeing, noticing, observing things about me, can you help give me some cues? Sometimes my husband will do this. I'll be able to process and go, okay, well, no, that's not what I'm feeling. I'm not looking for somebody else to tell me what I feel, right? That's not what I'm feeling, but here's what I'm feeling. But it just kind of helps me kind of get the cue in. But for me, it's helpful to get, I'm a fairly self-aware person, but I'm not necessarily as connected in with my emotions. So, um, super helpful. So first step, honor your emotions, which means you have to slow down. You have to listen, because if you don't, those feelings are just going to continue to get bigger and bigger, and you may find yourself sitting on a plane, having a panic attack, wondering if you're having a heart attack.
Yeah.
um, the danger of ignoring or suppressing your feelings. We talked about, you had actually this really great example.
So I think a lot of times, like how a spoiled apple can spoil the bunch, right? Like I feel like the same thing can happen if you don't acknowledge those feelings the next time you're in a similar situation or interacting with that person. You may unintentionally be bringing some of that baggage to the conversation. My husband has done a wonderful job explaining to me, you gotta voice those feelings. You can't hold on to it and then later have an explosive reaction and start pulling stuff up from months ago that you never brought to me, that we never discussed. I feel like as I have gotten older, I have gotten better, but I still have a lot of work to do in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, it is really important, right? One of the things you also reminded me of is so often I think about those negative emotions that you have to process through. I'm also not great at honoring the positive emotions. For positive emotions, if you don't allow yourself to really feel those, then you miss out on all of the joy. You miss out, to your point, on sharing that joy with other people, and the joy that they can get from that because it's contagious, right? You then can kind of become disillusioned to those things in life that can actually bring happiness and joy. And that's what we're all about, is chasing
Right?
joy and happiness. And um,
Right? Who doesn't want those things in their life?
yeah, can lead to depression. We talk about gratitude, how important gratitude is. We've talked about our gratitude moments and really learning ourselves on how to practice that more in our
Yeah.
everyday life. It's important to stop and honor your emotions, even those positive ones, not just the negative ones, because there's a lot of tension out there and life is short and fleeting, and we should get to enjoy absolutely as much of it as possible. And if you just take those happy moments and move past them without pausing, it doesn't lead to ultimate satisfaction.
Yeah, I like to think of that saying, stop and celebrate the little wins. I feel like this is an exact reason why that's there, right? Because sometimes
Yeah.
when you're in a situation, a big situation, you're slowly chipping away at it. It may feel overwhelming. It may feel like it's out of your control, but then you forget, wow, there are a lot of little small wins that I could find joy and happiness in to continue, like, for that motivation and to feel like you're making progress. Like celebrate those things because it can become all consuming and overwhelming.
I remember early in my post college career, I had traveled to another office. Our COO was also at that office, and um, he invited me to this leadership team dinner. I was just out of college, like, not, absolutely not like a part of that level. I remember thinking to myself, like, this is one of those really high career moments. He had a lot of really nice things to say about me, a lot of praise for me. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to have to hang on to this because if it, if I don't, I know there are low moments coming,
Yeah.
and those bad days are going to be a lot harder if I can't also hang on to this good day. And just the clarity with which I had that, and I can't see all the details, but I still can go back to that moment and just remembering that, thinking of, I need to hold on to this one because this is a feel good, and I don't get this kind of feel good every day. And it's going to make all those hard moments so much easier to deal
Yep.
with, because this is a really high point. So um, I think really important to collect those positive moments
Yeah.
as well. Some potential pitfalls in the honor your emotions, uh, to the feel phase of the 4-step process, is not uh, not getting to the pause phase, so getting stuck here in the feeling phase, and then like spiraling. So really important to make sure that you give yourself the space on your emotions, and then you move to step 2. So you got to move yourself into the pause phase. Um, so Chris, talk to us about the power of pause.
So I think a really good thing, the reason I think both of us really resonated with this model is because of this exact section, the pause, because it does kind of allow you to, you've had space for your feelings, you are processing and then catching up maybe the intellectual part of of your processing, you start to really allow yourself to see the situation in different ways. You've recognized your feelings. You're not shutting down, because that's like so important that you don't do. You have to take the time to really sit with all of this and then acknowledge that those feelings are valid and they are there for a reason. And what are they trying to move you to do, or maybe not to do? And start like pulling those things apart. And you're, again, at this point, you're not really taking any action. You're just thinking through all of this stuff
Yeah,
and
I love
being
that you say
present.
that. And for me, the pause phase is not where you start to plan. That's next. That's step 3. So the pause phase is not about going, okay, are these feelings factual or are they just feelings? Because then what you start to do is like minimize your feelings. Remember, your feelings are valid. You need to honor them. So one of the things, again, go back to therapy. One of the things that I learned is when you're interacting with people, if and this applies to when you're interacting with yourself as well. If you are meeting emotions with intellectual, um, that's a mismatch. So you need to meet emotion with emotion and intellect with intellect, emotion with emotion, thoughts with thoughts. So if you're saying to yourself, okay, I feel this thing, and then your response back to yourself is, that's a feeling, that's not a fact, that's not how it really works, that's not really honoring your emotions, not meeting yourself with emotion. So before you move on to the plan phase where you decide, is this fact, is this opinion, is this perspective, you have to say, okay, I hear my feelings and they are valid, whether they are based on fact or whether I am making things up. I'm still feeling this way and I need to acknowledge that. And that happens in the pause phase. So I think that's really important.
I think the pause part, is hard for me, because I think based on the way that I process, like when I'm able to identify my feelings and things like that, I think that's my pause. It causes me to switch much faster. Um, I hear what you're saying about thoughts with thoughts, feelings with feelings, and everyone is allowed to have their own thoughts, feelings, and opinions. I come from a place of, we are all allowed to have our feelings and our emotional reactions. Those are things that I cannot tell you that your feelings are wrong, and you cannot tell me that my feelings are wrong. However, I do think it is very important that we understand where those feelings are coming from, which is the point of this section,
The pause,
the
yes.
pause. But I think I don't think you have to look for an emotional reason for your emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you don't always have to I agree, absolutely. And I think that's kind of the point, is you can have feelings that are irrational and they're still very real feelings. So they don't have to be fact-based and they're still very real feelings. I think my tendency, when I think not about myself, but about others, when others are saying to me, I feel XYZ, my tendency is to respond back with a fact instead. And it unintentionally minimizes the feelings, invalidates the feelings. And I'm doing this to others, but I do this to myself all the time. Like, that's why I do it to others. This is my natural routine that I'm trying to learn how to break. And so I think it is really important to then start planning and go, what am I going to do about this? And that's where you separate out and you kind of you move more into the cognitive space about it. But if you don't take a pause to really kind of meet the emotion with the emotion, to say, you know what, like, it's okay that you feel this way. So, like, have some self compassion, be kind to yourself. All of that, I feel like, deals with this meeting your emotion with emotion,
Yeah.
and being able to say, okay, like, yeah, you got really upset about that, and that's actually okay. Instead of going, that wasn't rational, you shouldn't get so upset about that, why are you so worked up? um, I think that's the meet emotion with emotion and cognitive with cognitive. It doesn't have to be rational, it doesn't have to make sense, it's a feeling, and that's okay. Now, what you choose to do with your feelings, you can't always validate that for yourself, and
Right.
that's where we go into the plan phase. But before we get there, some some kind of tips or tricks, um, things practically that you can do to get into pause. I know one of the things that you talked about is you put it down and walk away and give it space. When you're having this really big feeling of impulse, you make the space for pause by walking away so that you can come back to it later. You can take a deep breath. You can count to a certain number. I love there's some breath work around like a certain rhythm of number of breaths in and number of breaths out. And, you can Google it, look it up on YouTube. There's a certain, there are a few different like rhythms or cadence to get yourself physically to like slow down. It changes your heart rate, which changes your chemical
Yeah.
influx. And those are really good things to do to break the inertia of a feeling and create a pause, so that then you can move into the plan where you can be practical. But you don't have to be practical and emotional at the same time. It's
Right.
important to separate those two things out.
I do also think that it's good advice also when in a conversation with someone too, right? Like if all of a sudden feelings just start getting thrown back and forth and there's no like what are we trying to successfully achieve in this? Like can you in the current state that you are both in, can you get there? And if not, again, just saying, why don't we press pause on this?
Yeah.
Go our separate ways for a little bit and then let's come back and have a conversation because I do
No,
think it can become
sometimes people read that as passive aggressive. And so I think you just be vulnerable enough or honest enough to say, hey, I really want to talk about this with you, but I need a minute. Um, and you're able to kind of, and if there's somebody that can't ultimately respect that, even if maybe not in the moment, um, maybe do you want to have that conversation with them? Like, is it worth it? That would be a good thing to think about during the
yeah,
pause.
during the
I think
pause.
the point of pause is de-escalation. Because what we know is that when you're in amygdala hijack, which you get when feelings get big and they get bigger and bigger, the less that you take the time to honor them, you like it's neuroscience. It's just neuroscience. You cannot think logically. Your brain narrows, your attention span narrows. You cannot consider all of the additional perspectives and factors
Right.
because nature is honing you to be able to protect yourself by focusing on just this one very zoomed in thing. And so sometimes you have to create that space to de-escalate, allow all of that to settle, and that's the power of the pause. So that's like a really heightened example. Sometimes it's just a really brief pause, or if it's comedic relief is a thing for a reason, right? You tell a funny joke and it de-escalates a
Right.
situation. So it can be big or it can be small, but I think the potential pitfalls of the pauses, sometimes you pause too long and then you never get to the plan part. You're like in avoidance mode, and the
Right.
pause is something that you use in order to then support your desire to avoid.
Yep.
And that's not healthy because you're going to get back into that cycle of feeling that's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Um, or sometimes you might be someone who tends to get distracted. So maybe you're not intentionally avoiding, but you have gone down a chain of 50,000 other things and you didn't follow back around to the pause, to the plan. And super important to be intentional around what am I doing? Feel, pause, plan, act. So you have to move to the plan. So we'll call that pragmatism after the pause, or it's the plan. And Chris, we know how you feel about a plan.
Love a good plan. If you have a plan, you can work it.
And failure to plan is planning to fail.
That's
Um,
correct.
and I love that about you. I think it's part of what makes you so good at what you do, and it's a high strength you bring to the table. So talk to us a little bit about the plan or being pragmatic after the pause.
So for me, the planning is like the part where you have now acknowledged all of the things from your feelings perspective, and you're really pulling into the place where how do I take all of this information and start to put it into action, or plan for that action. A good way that I have found to help as I've moved through these types of things is distinguishing between fact and opinion. Like, what are the things that are facts of the conversation, this situation, whatever you may be going through, and then what are the opinions, and then where can I take action? Where are those places that I can start truly formulating thought and things to make me start to feel more comfortable in those situations? I also like to think of this whenever it comes to interacting with people as feelings versus facts, because feelings, as we've discussed, are very important, and it's important that we acknowledge those. It's also very important to understand that our feelings aren't always facts. Our facts influence our feelings. So when we understand our facts, we can then start to process what are those actions we can take. What are your thoughts on that?
So I love like the one of the things that you brought forward when we were talking through this was focusing on what's the outcome I actually want. And like some tools to help you in the plan phase. This is where like I love to live, is just in this like, all right, let's think practically about this, as opposed to the emotional side. I do love list making, and journaling can come in any fashion.
That's
So
right.
I've been pushing myself to journal more, which I actually have found to be really like effective for processing my emotions. But when I'm thinking about like a plan, I love to make a list, and I love to like tactile write down a list. But do whatever works for you. Put it on a post-it note, put it on a notebook, put it in your phone, type it
Yep.
out, list it out in your head, put it on a whiteboard. But make a list, maybe journal, do a pro con. Phone a friend. I love this one too. This is where
I
Chris
think
and
we
I
do
talk
really well at
about
this.
this is as expressives. We need to get it out of our system verbally often. We need to chew our words out loud in order to process them. And so a part of the planning and the thinking about the plan is talking to somebody else. So phone a friend, not just any friend, someone you trust, going back to those trusted people.
Yep.
And you trust this person to listen and ask you questions, not to tell you what to do, but to listen and ask you questions, because oftentimes, like, you've got all the information you need within you. You are the driver of the bus, but maybe you just need a little bit of external perspective to help get you there. Um, Short term versus long term thinking. Um, what are you maybe the outcome that you want in this moment, that like impulsive burning desire to just tell somebody off, and the outcome that you really want at the end of the day, to not destroy relationships or
Yeah, and I think that's a good point when it comes also to like what is that, end outcome that you're looking for? And, is it the saying is the orange worth the squeeze? Are you like spending a lot of time on something that really at the end of the day is not that big of a deal, or it's not that like the impact on you or whatever the situation you're in, is does it deserve as much time and energy that you're giving it? And if it is, great, like continue down that path. But if it's not, then identify that. How do we move on, without like throwing everything up in the air and saying, oh, well, it's not important, I'm walking away.
yeah. Well, and I think when you're in this phase, what you can do is say, okay, well, the fact is, I got really worked up over this. So why am I getting so worked up over this? Is it about this? Is it about something else? Have I failed to talk about this in the past enough times? Is there a trust thing? Am I really feeling unheard by this person? Are my core values not aligned with the direction that this is going in? And so it's
Yeah,
agitating me. Do I just need to change my mindset? So I'm showing up expecting something from people that is not what they have to offer. And so it's just a mental shift that I need to make. And because, you can only change yourself. You can't change other people. You can
very
influence,
true.
as both of us are influencers, as tested. We have that that strength of convincing or influencing. You can influence, but you can't change other people. And so sometimes the plan part is changing how you frame things up in your head, so that every time somebody does something that triggers you, you can stop getting triggered, because you go, wait a second, I decided I'm going to think differently about this. Sometimes it's taking an action. Sometimes it's needing to have a conversation. Sometimes it's making a big life change. It's like thinking about how you frame things up. I think for me, the important point to call out here is you have to go back and remember emotions are signals. So you need to listen to what your body, your mind, your emotions were signaling to you. And what is it that the inner you is trying to tell yourself by having this big emotion? And sometimes it's like not really on the nose. Sometimes it's adjacent. You need to step back and kind of explore that. So if you're feeling those feelings of, like you said, wow, this emotion is a lot bigger than what I feel like this situation deserves. Like, is it a chemical thing for me? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's, hey, I have been ignoring something else. And so my anxiety is at a high, and this thing really isn't a big deal to me. And yet I'm getting triggered, but there's something else I need to go explore. Sometimes it's, I'm kind of cranky because I'm hungry and I haven't eaten. So let me eat and then come back and think
Yeah.
about this. And there's still something I need to deal with, but it's really not a big deal. And we don't need to make a mountain out of a molehill, but we better get the molehill cleaned up before it becomes a mountain.
Yeah, like when I'm tired, like when I am truly tired, everything to me seems insurmountable. There's everything has a problem, everything needs to be fixed. I have started to evaluate when I am feeling that way. Okay, let's just do a quick inventory real quick. Like, how much sleep have we gotten? When was the last time we ate? Are these feelings that I have, like I'm feeling them, but are they for the real reasons?
Is this why? Yeah. Or
Right.
am I taking other feelings I need to deal with and not like applying
Correct.
them somewhere else? And when
Right.
you're not at your best, sometimes it's easy to confuse those
Exactly.
things. But there's probably still something there for you to deal with. So, what I think is really unhealthy is you're having a feeling and you say, oh, I'm just tired. Oh, I'm just
Right.
hungry. I'm just, no, there's probably something there. But you may need to take care of those physical needs. Go back to the pause. Like
Right.
that's where you may need to go back into pause. Take care of whatever is going on so that you can come back and think pragmatically. Because if your brain is starved for nutrients, for sleep, for whatever, you, you're not actually prepared to like practically think things through.
Right.
That takes cognitive effort, and it's just neuroscience here, people. You cannot be at your best cognitively when you are too tired. So
Exactly.
hunger, sleep, like those basic Maslow's base level hierarchy of needs, if you're not meeting those for yourself, go into pause, meet those needs, and don't get stuck in pause. Come
Right.
back and deal with
Come
your
back.
feelings.
Very important to come back.
It's very important to come back. Um, I love that you talked about, is your plan aligned with your core values? So when thinking about what actions you think you want to take, stopping to ask yourself, like, does this feel true to me? And I think that this is really important, especially when you are the person that's looking to serve others. And so you may compromise for yourself. Sometimes it's okay to do that, right? Like, it's okay to compromise for yourself and serve somebody else and make a choice for somebody else. But if you can't take care of you, no one's going to take care of you. So you have to
Yeah.
be intentional about that. I'm not saying compromising is never okay. What I am saying is, does this align with your core values? Because if you're compromising your core values, probably a problem. It's probably not
Right.
somewhere you should be compromising.
Well, and I think it also comes to the like it is based on what you're doing, right? Like whatever your situation may be. If like maybe you're in certain situations where you're working with a team or you're trying to figure out like solve a business issue. This may become like one of those places where you have to be willing to engage in a little bit more back and forth and truly voice your thoughts, feelings, and opinions. To me, this is where like the feelings are important to discuss because that impact could make, or the decision made, that impact could be felt and cause others to have strong feelings. Is that the intention that we're trying to achieve? I think going back to your core values is always just a great compass to set truth to.
Yeah. So, in this stage of feel, pause, plan, act, potential pitfalls could be using pragmatism as an excuse to not feel. So, you skip the honor your emotions part of the process. That's not good because you first have to meet emotion with emotion in order to then move to pragmatic. And that is where I spend a lot of energy trying to develop myself. Um, you can get stuck in overthinking and get the analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
So you may enjoy the plan phase more. You may get stuck in your planning of going, what's the perfect way? And you kind of get trapped in this feels like such a big decision and I don't know how to move forward. You may be intimidated by the whatever action you have to take. And so you give yourself too much permission to be in the I'm just thinking about it
Right.
phase. You have to push yourself to the act, and it's particularly if you're breaking a cycle or you're making a change. We know that one of my favorite sayings is that change happens outside your comfort zone or at the edge of your comfort zone at the very least. And so if it feels uncomfortable, you're probably doing it right if you're trying to break a cycle of behavior. So it may not always feel comfortable, but this is where you're kind of being pragmatic with yourself and saying, you know what, but I'm not basing my decision on feelings. I'm basing my decision on the logic here. Boxing yourself in. So you're so focused on the problem at hand that you forget that there could be numerous solutions. Are you even solving the right problem? So back to the is this something that's like trailing in? Irritated with this person over something I haven't dealt with, and now I'm fighting with them about something that's completely unrelated because I'm bringing that energy to the table. Is this the right problem for me to be focusing on? That can be a pitfall of this stage, and then just failing to be pragmatic altogether. In the plan phase, you cannot be stuck in the emotions. You have to be willing to challenge yourself. That can be scary. A lot of times people will say or think, I don't want to think about the other possibilities because I don't want to threaten what I believe. Right. It's okay for you to go down this path of what else could be true, even if it's not true. It doesn't compromise what you believe, but to consider somebody else's perspective, consider an alternative. It doesn't water down your truth. So if you're really afraid of doing that, then maybe you're telling yourself that there might be other possibilities and you're just not ready to explore them yet. Which is okay. Maybe you need to go back to the feelings phase and meet feelings with feelings there.
Yeah, but I think that when you talk about change, I think if you know how change makes you feel, being aware of that, so that way you can, again, you're acknowledging how it's making you feel, but you're not letting it stop you and you're not letting it paint you in, because it is very easy to be afraid and to let that stop you.
Yeah. And then the final phase is act. You have to actually carry out the action. So you can't get through the feel, the pause, the plan, and then fail to do anything about it because you're just going to keep having that fight over and over again.
Right.
You got to take the action. You got to give the other people the opportunity to rise to the occasion. You've got to give yourself the opportunity to rise to the occasion. Had I not made the change that I made from a career standpoint, I don't think I would have grown the way that I have grown over the past number of years. Yeah. I don't think I would have experienced the joy. I would not be the person that I am today. And I don't think I would have found the success that I have found. Not that I haven't made other decisions in life, but I would have missed out on a lot of really rich experiences. And I think for me, that's really important.
I think something that you said that I really appreciated is sometimes these things are not easy and sometimes they are hard and they are scary. It's very easy to move you from the act back into the plan or maybe even back into the pause, because it is a scary thing to have to truly think about. And I just say, allow that space and understanding for yourself. But also don't continue to put yourself in the same situation and be mad that the outcome isn't changing. Like, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, like, that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So it's just being aware of how we play a part in that. I think, like, it's whenever we embrace.
You got to meet yourself where you're at. And I think, as we wrap up, like, that's I think one of the most important things to remember. I know that, like, giving this a 4-step process makes it seem formal. This can be a very casual approach, or rhythm to how you approach things. So it doesn't have to be like everything is a big deal that you have to, like, really work through with the framework. Like, this is just a rhythm. Think of it more like a rhythm, like your heart beats on a rhythm. So feel, pause, plan, act. Remember that practice makes better, not perfect. You're not going to, like, do this enough times that then you achieve this level of every single time I meet it 100%. Life is, the art of stumbling and, continuing to move. And just because you learned how to walk at one point doesn't mean you're never going to stumble. I stumble all the time. So, I think it's just a way to take your power back a little bit and put yourself a little more in charge of driving to your satisfaction. So whether it's a small thing and this all happens in kind of a very short time frame, or whether it's a big thing and you go, wait, wow, okay, I really need to take some time and maybe actually get out a piece of paper and make a list around this. I think taking the feel, pause, plan, act kind of rhythm and applying that to when you're feeling those emotions and getting those signals from your body is a really good way to honor your emotions without impulsively going in like a bull in a china shop and disrupting the picture that you're trying to paint for yourself.
Yeah, I definitely think I've heard this quote a lot. Yesterday it just hit differently after, putting this together. It was the quote about, it's not the destination, it's about the journey. I think it's whenever I find my most reflective times or whenever I become aware of something. So a framework like this: feel, pause, plan, act. And then I go into my day to day and I start seeing, like, how this happens. Sometimes, like you said, real time, pretty quick, not that big a thing. Other situations, like getting out that piece of paper and my journal and figuring it out.
Absolutely. So in closing, just practice the feel, pause, plan, act, rhythm. And we would really love to know your thoughts on this. We'd love to know what works for you, what hasn't worked, if you've incorporated this in a way and you learned something from the outcome of it. We'd love to know that. If you have any good tips or tricks that we didn't talk about, we would absolutely love those. We've talked about how this is a work in progress for us, and something that there are different phases of the rhythm that are easier for us or more difficult for us. So we'd love to know your experience and we would absolutely take your tips. So how can they get a hold of us, Chris?
So you can reach us via email at chrisjeninthemorning@gmail.com. We also have voicemail. You can text us at 940-278-8129. Again, that's 940-278-8129.
Or drop a comment on this video. We will read every single comment that you leave. See us on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere podcast or social media is generally taken in. We are probably there. So we'd absolutely love to hear from you, and we really appreciate you listening to us. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and make sure to continue hearing content from us. We hope you have an amazing day.
Yes, go be successful in your life.